Several minutes of commercial-free football starts now.
Here are the Purple Mortgage guys.
Hey, it's Brent and Goose here, Purple Mortgage guys. Hope everybody's doing well. Wanted to jump on tonight, give a little optimism about the playoff game coming up this weekend with the Giants. Goose, we're doing a quick dive here on the 2021 Rams and our 2022 Vikings, and just some comparisons there and some similarities with the two squads. So if you've not yet subscribed to our channel, guys, if you want to hit the subscribe button below, we'd love to have you follow and comment if you've got any feedback or questions for Goose, Tanner, or myself going forward. So Goose, we'll get into predictions and stuff for the game probably in the next show, but tonight specifically, the 2021 Los Angeles Rams came into the playoffs. They were flying under the radar, finished the season at 12-5. They went through a stretch, I believe in November of last year, where they went like 30 days without winning a game. They dropped some. They had losses. They had 3 double-digit losses. Maybe not quite as bad as what we've experienced with the Cowboys and Packers and maybe the Eagles there, but they had some bad losses as well. They had a stud receiver who the offense ran through, which sounds familiar. They had a QB that everybody thought was pretty good, but they were questioning like if he could take the team to the next level. Check, sounds familiar. They had an offensive coordinator that we know quite well, and Kevin O'Connell. And I think the similarities probably end a little bit with maybe the defense, but just looking at Cousins and Stafford's stats, they were pretty similar from last year. So we were just talking. The Rams came into the playoffs, like we said, under the radar. They got hot, and it feels like if we can just piece some things together, get the offense to score, maybe have a few more productive possessions, we could follow that same blueprint into the playoffs and be the 2021 Rams. Who knows where it ends, but that would be the formula. So Goose, like when you think of the Rams of last year and the Vikings of this year, do we see similarities, or are there too many like red flags with that scenario where it's just purple Kool-Aid and wishful thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do. I think, Stafford's time with the Lions, they couldn't win a playoff game. There's a lot of noise around whether or not he was ever with, a team around him, but a lot of unknown, which I think a lot of times, there is some truth to the fact that Kirk hasn't played a ton of postseason football for someone who's 33, 34 years old. But a lot of times when you look at his statistics in big games, he's had a few where he's come up short, but I feel like there's also a lot where he's balled out and the defense gives up 40 points. And as a quarterback, you get slapped with the loss and that you can't win in prime time. And then I think a lot of people don't really give him, I don't want to say credit because it's not credit, but give him any bit of a pass for being on a not very good Redskins team for a majority of his career and count those primetime losses against him. So, but yeah, I look at Stafford, very borderline reckless with the ball, gunslinger, takes shots. Kirk has probably done that more this year than ever in his career. He's got the most interceptions he's thrown, but he's also done some things that are pretty rare in the league to have 4 receiving threats with 60 receptions in a season. Obviously, the most of that going to JJ, who's now Kevin O'Connell has two offenses back-to-back seasons with the receiver getting the most receptions. And then even though the statistics don't really support it, I was kind of thinking about the personnel from the Rams defense and the Vikings defense. Obviously, no one's Aaron Donald, but I think what the Za'Darius that we saw at the beginning of the year can maybe be at least a shell of him. You look at, maybe Robert Quinn that they had as a veteran. Daniil could certainly play that role. Jalen Ramsey, again, probably one of the best corners in the league, but Patrick Peterson's been playing at a top 5 level all season.
Don't forget about Duke Shelley here recently either. He's really stepped up. So
you had Duke Shelley in there. You look at an aging, you look at some of the similarities there, and I think there's a lot of veteran leadership. I think the fact that we've been able to sprinkle in some young guys to get them experience is going to be big. But yeah, I absolutely think there's a lot of similarities there, and it's all about who can get hot at the right time.
I think there's a big thing with the playoffs in particular. You need to pick an upset, right? Like you can't just go higher seed's going to win every game.
Yeah,
You've got the national media and national audience, for that matter, that really have seen the Vikings play their worst games. The Green Bay one was obvious. That's the most recent. So you got the recency bias there. That Cowboys game that they went away from, that was just brutal. And then you've got the Kirk Cousins narrative that you hit on already that I don't think that'll ever change. And I feel like if he had the demeanor of a Baker Mayfield, but the skills and stats and ability of Kirk Cousins, he would probably be one of like these quarterbacks that are just probably given too much credit and elevated super high on the national scene, but he's not. He's Kirk Cousins, and that's not going to change. And therefore, I don't think the narrative on him changes unless the Vikings do go deep into the playoffs and he's, winning them some games. That's obvious for the casual viewer to see on the highlight reel. So even though the Vikings are favored by 3 as of the time of shooting this, I don't think we could argue that people would pick against them because they haven't shown up in big spots necessarily. They did beat the Giants, but only by a field goal, which still beat them. But I could see why people are picking the Giants this weekend. But I think if you flash back like a year ago, there were probably quite a few people picking against the Rams. Maybe not round 1, but I think they went into Tampa round 2 playing Tom Brady. I bet there was probably quite a few picking the Bucs at that point. And then the rematch with the Niners, which they had already lost to twice in the regular season, for them to come out on top there. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming as well. So a lot of similarities there. I think we've got a lot to be optimistic about, though, as Vikings fans going into the playoffs. You hit on Za'Darius. He was injured in that Buffalo game, probably tried to play through when maybe he should have, maybe he shouldn't have, but he was not his same self. Sounds like he's healthy. Garrett Bradbury's back practicing. Blake Brendel might be an option at right tackle. That's obviously a huge loss with Brian O'Neill or it's Oliudo, but you're going to have holes at this point in the season. Every team's got them. Yep. Duke Shelley's been playing amazing, which I don't think we ever would have uttered those words or thought we would have. Now you've got Harrison Smith rested and Josh Metellus and Asamoah playing there as well. Pretty good right now. So I don't know. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic, Goose. I'm not saying we're going to win a Super Bowl here, but it wouldn't be shocking, I guess, to see the team go on a little bit of a run.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of teams have had the luxury of, well, I know they haven't, of clinching their division so early. And granted, we still had some things to play for, but it's been 4 or 5 weeks now where we've been shuffling guys in. And not only is that huge for them to get that experience, like you mentioned with Metellus and Asamoah and some of these rotational guys, but also getting that snap count kind of down for the veterans. I just think that's huge. The only teams I can think of that are in the playoffs that have been able to give any amount of like decent rest to their players are players that have been injured. And it's just not the same when you're rehabbing and you haven't been with the team. So like Debo's coming back, but that's from injury for the Niners. And so I think that's going to go a long way. I think there's a lot of veteran leadership on this team, a lot of veterans who have been to the playoffs and maybe fizzled out and know that this is maybe one of their last shots. And hopefully it gives them a little extra gear on Sunday.
You think most Vikings fans are optimistic and think, we're going to turn things on in the playoffs? Or do you think it's oh boy, here we go. Is this the first half against the Colts? Is this the Green Bay game? Is this Dallas? Like, what do you think the overall vibe is going into Sunday?
I'm definitely seeing some positivity, but I feel like more than anything, I'm even seeing some, and maybe it's just because we're used to it, but I'm seeing a lot of like, are we going to move on from Donatel? Are we who could we go after Lamar Jackson if he doesn't get a deal with the Ravens? And I think win, lose, whatever, 13-4 season and a division win and the Packers missing the playoffs is such a luxury that you got to force yourself to live in the moment, enjoy the ride. I don't think anyone should feel overconfident about the Vikings, but I think there's absolutely no reason to think that they can't go on a run here. They really don't have like a glaring weakness as far as personnel. There's been some sides of the ball that haven't been consistent all year, but I think when you look at the X's and O's, you look at the players that are taking the field, there's no reason to think that they can't take it to any team on any given week.
So with the consistency, then is that coaching? Is that mindset? Like they've got I don't think we would disagree. They've got the skill players in the right spots to be able to make plays. They've shown it time and time again. I think our fear is that it takes an hour and a half to get the switch started, or they go silent for 2 quarters in the middle of the game, and then it's game over. And that Dallas game, if that was not at home, I think you could just say, well, they're at home, they're going to play well. But that Dallas game and the first half of that Indy game, they were both at US Bank Stadium. And I think that's maybe what sticks in the back of people's minds more than anything. So I don't know what's the key there to playing a full 4 quarters? Because I don't think we've seen that yet this year.
Yeah. So a few things on that. I think there's certainly, you could be the best coach in the world and you're going to have some growing pains in year one. You're going to learn some lessons. I think fortunately KOC has shown in most weeks, if there's something really negative, it's typically fixed. Now we'd like that to stick a little bit better. But to not have lost 2 games in a row this season is a great sign. I think kind of coaching through adversity is something he's had to learn this year. I think maybe when some of these younger players or some of these players who have had to fill in for injuries, the second they make maybe a mistake or two, now maybe a veteran's trying to overcompensate for them. And it's famous lines, Bill Belichick, like, do your job. And so if you see someone who you feel like is screwing up and you feel like you got to overcompensate, now you're out of position. I think all of our games this year that we don't look good in, there's been some form of snowball effect. So maybe that's a bad call by KOC. Then a young player comes in, is screwing up, and now the veterans are kind of in scramble mode to try to be more than what they're supposed to. So I think hopefully KOC's put together 17 games of learning, and the veterans get together. Guys like Duke Shelley have now kind of supplanted himself as the starter, and they've got that experience now, which I think is going to be a world of difference. One other thing that I thought was really interesting is Jared Allen was doing in an interview, I forget which show, and it was more so about Kirk, but they did ask him about, tell me the difference between, it was with Colin Cowherd. So he asked about the difference between beginning of the season, post Thanksgiving, and then postseason. And just to hear his thoughts on that were pretty wild. So pre-Thanksgiving, he said everyone's kind of going for their contract incentives. Post-Thanksgiving, everyone's kind of getting locked in. But then postseason, everyone's like contract incentives are out the door. Like it's all about winning a ring. And so I'm hopeful that the guys can kind of show that mindset.
So I think the big thing for me is you hear these, call them like conspiracy theories, but it's like O'Connell's playing chess and everybody else is playing checkers. He's saving things for the playoffs, which I think would be really cool if it's true. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but I think for me, what I would love to get back to is the unpredictability of the offense, because
for sure,
you put up 30, 35, 40 points, your defense, Goose, that you've been high on all year or standing up for, which I don't disagree with you here the last few weeks. It's not been the huge problem. They play a different game. The pressure's not on. You can afford to play a little bit of that bend, don't break, be a little more opportunistic when opportunities present themselves. So I don't know. I think for me, that's what I'm most excited about. Is he going to get creative? Has he been saving things? We saw that Jefferson double pass early in the year. And then we
Yeah.
saw another play that was designed somewhat similar a few weeks later. He didn't end up throwing it, but you have to think things like that. There's going to be some wrinkles and some surprises. I think that's going to be exciting to see that unfold, and hopefully it lasts more than one and done in the playoffs. So
For sure. I think the big thing that the defense relies on, they're not a shutdown defense. But what they have done for most of the season is create a spark. And when the offense capitalizes on the spark, it seems like they do pretty well. And when we leave it on the 1 yard line or go 3 and out, and they get sent out onto the field 3 or 4 times in a row, that's when it seems like they implode. They give up the 10-yard hook routes over and over and over. And so I think it's got to be really good complementary football. Our defense isn't going to shut anyone out, but I think they're going to make enough plays, and the offense then has to turn around and capitalize on that.
I agree. Well, guys, we just wanted to throw some positivity out there on a Thursday night that doesn't have a Thursday night football game on. We see a lot of reasons to be optimistic. Obviously, anything can happen, but there's no reason to think this team can't go on a run, can't compete on Sunday and make it to the divisional round, NFC Championship, and who knows, it also could all come crashing down, as we're well aware from week to week. So,
yeah.
Goose, any closing thoughts for tonight?
I don't think so. Like I said before, I'm living in the moment. I'm soaking in a winning season, a home playoff game. I would have loved to have secured 2, but just gonna enjoy the ride and hope for the best. And I'm not thinking any mock drafts, any potential trades, cuts until I'm forced to. So that's my thought.
Now, the good news is there could be one home game, there could be 2, there could be 3. We don't know. It depends on how those other games shake out. So we'll all be we'll have our number 12 jerseys on Saturday afternoon, cheering for the Seahawks.
Yeah.
Hopefully the game on Sunday is competitive, and like you said, a lot of reason to be optimistic. Getting to the playoffs is what it's all about. And like you said, it's been a successful, most entertaining season that I can ever remember watching the Vikings. So, well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, if you haven't yet subscribed, please feel free to do that here below. Leave us some comments, and we'll make sure we mention them on the next show with any questions or comments that you guys have. So have a great night, everybody.